There's an
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. BC here, coming to you with another episode of Oddcast, the podcast. Today's episode, I'm really excited and honestly quite nervous for. Our message and theme of the day is empowering political disagreement. Scott and I have been friends via Facebook for several years now. We met at a National Speakers Association meeting in Denver. I don't even know back when, probably 2008, 2009 would be my guess.
Sounds about right.
And, you know, we've been going back and forth with very differing political opinions. I would say we're almost as far on the opposite ends of the spectrum as people can possibly be. But we both had a very nice discourse on and conversation on some of his threads, and we aspired to be here today to share what is possible and how to have a productive, positive, compassionate, uplifting political conversation with somebody that doesn't always agree with you. Our three big themes for today are: one, to demonstrate how to disagree with compassion; two, how to stay open to others' perspectives and see where both sides are coming from; and three, hopefully offer some viable solutions for positive change. Before I introduce Scott, I do want to give a little bit of background on myself, because I think it's very easy, especially when we're dealing with these type of high emotional triggering conversations, to kind of forget that there's a person on the other side and forget their humanity. So a little bit of background on my end that a lot of people might not know. So in August 8th, 1997, I had a motorcycle accident in which I died 3 times. I had compound fractures of both femurs, 6 broken ribs, and my heart stopped on 3 separate occasions. For the last 6 years, I've been dedicating my life to running a nonprofit organization called A World Empowered. Our mission is to help people who like helping people to help more people. And so far, we've planted 125 trees in Malawi, Africa. We've donated 200 meals to Meals on Wheels, 600 malaria nets to kids in Uganda, donated over $5,000 worth of my Dream Achiever book to graduating kids in 2020 at high schools in 2020. Just trying to make a difference and help other nonprofits wherever we can. Also, one of my crowning achievements, one of the things that I'm most proud of, is that I donated bone marrow to a 4-year-old with leukemia, just to help give people a little bit of perspective. Like, I'm not some nut job. I'm not some far out there wacko conspiracy theorist person. Like, I'm just a person that sees and is struggling with the political climate that we face in this country. And I'm happy to have Scott Q. Marcus on here with me to help me demonstrate how to have a positive conversation. And I would like you to share with our audience a little bit about who you are, what you do, and a little share with people your humanity and let people see the Scott that I know.
Well, first of all, you sound like a liberal.
Well, isn't that interesting?
I'm listening to what you are involved in and what you've done, and I'm thinking, yeah, that sounds like all the same stuff that I would like to do. I haven't done those, but so I'm thinking, hey, you sound like a liberal, which is a compliment. But anyway, my background, as you mentioned, I was a speaker. I technically still am, but I'm not on the road very much anymore. I live in Northwest California, a small town that everybody's heard of, but hardly anybody's been to, called Eureka. About 300 miles north of San Francisco on the coast, and it is the bluest of the blue. This is a very, very blue area politically, and I'm happy in that area. Now, granted, I have some disagreements with people who are on the left also. I have been politically active. I mean, I was a news junkie starting at about the age of 15. I got involved with my first political campaign when I was 17. I was able to vote when I was 18. I was the first. I'm born in 54, so I'm the first generation that was able to vote at 18. But I started working for McGovern at 17, and then voted for him when I turned 18. And I've always been aligned with what would be called liberal causes. But I'm somebody who believes firmly that there is no black or white here. There's basically gray. and we tend to be becoming black and white. And what prompted your and my conversation, for other people who wouldn't know this, I used to have some dear friends who lived up here who were opposing political views of mine. But I respected them, loved them very much. Unfortunately, they've passed away. And we would get together and have these great conversations where we just totally differed on our political views, but because we respected and cared for each other, we could discuss them. And they were some of my favorite conversations. And in the recent political climate that has been building over the last, God, I'd say 25 years, maybe even a little bit longer, it's gotten to the point where I can't have a discussion with somebody without it devolving into some sort of name calling. And how you and I got together was I had posted something on Facebook and you disagreed with it. And I gave you my standard response, which is what I give to everybody else. I'm willing to talk about this if you can cite sources. And you cited a source. And it was like, whoa, okay, now this is great. And that's what led to this conversation. So I believe in compassion and kindness above all. I'm a practitioner for the non-denominational philosophy called Science of Mind. I believe there is only one. We are all one. We are making these artificial thems and us's. And am hoping, as much as I would like everything to go the way that I think it needs to go, I know it's not going to. And the left is not going to get rid of the right. And the right is not going to get rid of the left. And since there is no planet B, we got to figure out how to share. And that means we each have to give up something. We each have to get something. And I'm hoping that our conversation, as we had a great one yesterday, is a way of starting to elevate the conversation to say, you're not going to change my mind. We already talked about that. I'm not going to change yours, but we can at least find some commonality to understand where we each come from. So maybe there will be some spark that somebody who's listening, or even you and I, will go, yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Okay. And I believe everything starts with two words: what if? And so maybe somebody will hear this and go, well, what if we thought about that? And from there, everything goes. Oh, my screensaver just turned on. So if you see me suddenly jump like that, it's because I'm turning my screensaver off. So that's,
like you said, I'm under no illusion that we're going to change each other's mind or change each other's perspective. The way I view most conversations is my objective is hopefully to plant a seed or water one. And if we're lucky, it lands on fertile ground and eventually it will sprout and germinate into something on its own. I'm not a political activist. I'm not a politician. I'm just someone that tries to be very astute and tries to pay attention to what's going on. And I try to get my information from a wide variety of sources. And one of the things that you talked about, I mean, one of the reasons that we started this conversation to begin with on your Facebook page is cite your sources. Mm-hmm. You know, anytime I post on somebody's comment or something, whether it's Facebook or in person, somebody's like, cite your sources. Where are you getting your information from? And if I'm dissenting in my opinion, if my viewpoint differs from theirs in any way, most of the time I'm met with, well, that's just a right-wing propaganda machine, or that's just BS or whatever. And I think that's one of the main topics that I would like to get into at some point today. Sure, is media as a whole. Mm-hmm. Before we delve into that, because I feel like that would kind of put a bow on a lot of the things that we want to talk about. What is something that you feel personally pressing, like imperative at the moment, that you would like to discuss? I said in my intro that our objective is to try to see others' viewpoints and perspectives with compassion. So what is something that's kind of weighing on you right now and your perspective about what's going on in the political arena today?
Wow, there is so much. I think that's part of the problem we're all facing is we are inundated with, I mean, not only do we get news quickly, but we get so much of it. I mean, just something as simple as the Supreme Court's decision is yesterday just amped it up for me a little bit more. My fear about people denying what is happening to our climate as being man-made, certainly human influenced, to a large
Sure.
extent. My concern about the fact that it is considered acceptable for somebody who can provably lie so many times to be considered a role model for many people. That goes against my set of values. Those would be
That's a dangerous, slippery slope. That's one of those things that often gets us into the whataboutism stuff that we talked about in our Zoom call yesterday. Of those 4 topics you just rattled off, what's the most pressing for you? Is it the SCOTUS thing from yesterday, the decision from the Supreme Court that's concerning you most right now?
God, it's really hard to prioritize. It's kind of the analogy of the frog in the water. That story that everybody talks about. You just little by little raise the water temperature, and the frog just sits there until he boils to death. It's kind of the feeling that I have. It's it's not any one of them can lead me down a ramp to outrage. Anyone. I mean, we can go, and I don't like being that type of person. That's not who I am. Like I said, I believe in compassion and kindness. I've always been kind of a passive sort of person, but the water level is on boil right now. And so I think it's the combination of everything that's coming forward. Okay, if we had to go with one, I would say it's like you and I talked about, it's that we have different sets of facts. I mean, facts are facts. They are not opinion. They are not. What was that?
You would think.
Yeah, but they're supposed to be. A fact is a fact. 2 + 2 = 4. That's a fact. We all would, and on that level, I think we all agree. But there are all sorts of other facts, and we have, as a society, and you and I being representatives of it, have diverged into silos or where I get all of these facts that I am absolutely 100% positive, well, not all of them, but that most of them are accurate. You know, I'm kind of a skeptic, and I believe in critical thinking. And so if I get something that's from a far left source, to be honest, I will question it because I don't want my own preconceptions just reinforced. I mean, unless it's accurate.
Sure.
But as you and I talked about, what I hear when I go on Facebook, when I check the news, when I go on my Apple Reader or Google News or whatever, the stuff that I see is apparently very different from what you see.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that you mentioned yesterday in our conversation, and the silos, and how you go on Facebook and you have a totally different reality in the information that you're getting. And the fact of the matter is that whether it's Facebook, YouTube, or Google, that is exactly what most people are experiencing. That I mean, I posted something on, I think, what is today, Tuesday? I posted something on Thursday of last week about, I think, 5 different people that had been, there were issues with illegal immigrants. We'll just put it that way, that they were unalived or worse. Not that there's something worse than that, but by illegal immigrants. And somebody's like, this isn't happening. This is fake news. Cite your sources, or I'm going to have to assume that you're a liar. Because when I go on and Google this, I don't find anything like that.
So I think is
that draws to the question, how is it that 2 different people can go onto Google and type in the same thing and get totally different results? And for me, for the longest time, people just used to assume, well, Google is a machine. They're a company. They're trying to give people what they want so that they can make more money. And now I can't help but wonder if it might be intent. If there might be a reason why you can go on and Google one thing, or you can go on YouTube and search one thing and get a completely different set of results than I get. And are you familiar with Dr. Robert Epstein?
The name might be familiar, but no, I have no idea.
Oh my God. So again, I do try to cite my sources, and if anybody has any questions about anything that I espouse or anything that I say in here, please ask. I'll do my best to validate or back it up. And again, I'm not a political commentator. I'm not an expert in any of this stuff, but I do try to pay attention. And Dr. Robert Epstein is the behavioral psychiatrist for American Institute of Behavioral Research, and he did a study showing that Google suppresses negative search results for Democrats and can turn a 50-50 undecided voter into a 90-10 Democrat. I want to pull up something because I knew that we were going to get into this eventually, but I wanted to talk about some of the actual issues beforehand. This is the wrong one.
I think what you're looking that up more to the point of, if this is out there, if what you're saying is accurate about this study, and I would, and my style, when I hear something like that, is I'll accept it at face value, and then I'll do kind of what I'm assuming you're doing right now, is I will get online and I will, you said he's from the American Institute of Behavioral something or another.
Behavioral Research, and I'll send you the study that he did. It's a 28-page study on this. And
what I will then do, when somebody gives me information, like on my Facebook page or wherever I get it, that seems that I don't agree with, and I also do this a lot of times when I do agree, but when I don't agree with it, for example, I will go research American Institute of Behavioral Research and find out, go to their homepage, do a little bit of about, the about page. I will then take a look at some of the names that are mentioned on there. I will research them a little bit, and I will see whether there's some sort of bias, because there are organizations out there that do rate news sources and others as everywhere from far left to far right. And then I'll go, okay, now.
You're not referring to Media Matters.
Media Matters doesn't do that per se, but Media Matters, I know what you're talking about, but there are others. And I think what we have to get to, and I don't remember the one that I look at, there's a news reader that I've started to use recently called Ground, Ground. I'm not doing a paid subscription yet, but I'm thinking about it. And what Ground does is it gives you all of these sources, so when it gives you a story, it doesn't give you one story, it gives you, like, in my experience, 7 or 8 different versions of it so far. And then it says each of these sources as to whether they're, it'll show them on a spectrum, far left, far right, center, and it'll tell you, if you want to do the paid side, which I haven't yet done, it'll tell you where the biases are leaning, the biases are not leaning. So you can get a nice overview.
And I've heard good things about Ground.
Yeah, I just discovered it. I think it was on one of my Facebook posts where I was mentioning I'm trying to find reasonable sources. So somewhere out there are people who we have to trust, that we share a common ground with, and there is a healthy skepticism is always good. Like I said, I'm healthy.
It's preferable. I think that's part of the reason why we end up in the situation that we're in, where, I feel like I'm digressing. I woke up this morning and I wrote an email to myself, and I feel what I said was, the biggest difference between myself and most people is that most people believe the information they get from their mainstream media sources is not only the truth, but they believe that it's unbiased. And because of their belief that this information is true and unbiased, predicated upon this understanding, they believe they have the moral authority to draw the conclusion that people who disagree with them are either ignorant, stupid, or evil. So when we believe that we have the right information, the information that we've gotten is unbiased, and someone disagrees with us, there's really only 3 conclusions. Either that person just doesn't know, they're uninformed, they're ignorant, they're stupid, they just can't grasp it, their brain is too small and they can't comprehend what you're trying to tell them, or they know what you're talking about and they're deriding it and dismissing it anyway out of malice and malintent. So I think the difference between myself, and I think for the most part, probably you as well, is that I believe that almost all of our information, especially from mainstream sources and including Google, is curated and cultivated by a machine that is systematically devised to keep us separate. Let me go back to the study. I want to read a couple paragraphs from the study from Dr. Robert Epstein, if you don't mind.
Sure.
In 2016, based on search results generated by Google search engine algorithms, It changed at least 2.6 million votes from Trump to Clinton. I know this to be true because I preserved more than 13,000 election-related searches conducted over a diverse group of Americans on Google, Bing, and Yahoo in the weeks leading up to the election, and the Google search results, which dominate the search engines in the US and worldwide, were significantly biased in favor of Secretary Clinton in all 10 positions of the first page of the search results. I know that the number of votes has shifted because I have conducted dozens of controlled experiments in the US and among other countries that measure precisely how opinions and votes shift when search results favor one candidate, cause, or company. I call this the shift SEME, is SEME, which stands for Search Engine Manipulation Effect. My first scientific paper on SEME was published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in 2015. SEME is one of the most powerful forms of influence ever discovered in the behavioral sciences, and it is especially dangerous because it is invisible to people and essentially a subliminal in effect. It leaves people thinking that they have made up their own minds. Bear in mind that all Google search engine results are in a sense biased because there is no equal time result in the Google algorithm, but SEME is an example of an ephemeral experience in which a phase in which you will I'll post the rest of the email or
Okay.
the entire study in here.
Let me get a clarification on something. It's not that he's saying Google changed 2 point however many million votes. It's it provided information that led to people changing, because Google has nothing to do with the voting.
Right. He's saying that by suppressing negative information, like negative stories or whatever on a particular party or particular issues or something like that, by suppressing specific stories, they were able to change between 2.6 and upwards of 25 million votes. Another thing that he discovered in his search, because what he's done is he actually has access to over 15,000 other computers around the country, so he can see their search results and what they call the ephemeral experience in those. One of the things that they noticed is that during the 2020 election, somewhere between 80 and 90% of Democrats received notifications, "Don't forget to go and vote." And somewhere between 25 and 30% of Republicans received similar notifications, "Don't forget to go out and vote." And he estimated that one element alone changed somewhere between 10 and 25,000 or 10 and 25 million votes just by that one thing.
It seems like that's just voter organization. I mean, both parties try to organize their votes.
But it's Google organizing that. It's Google specifically saying, and here's and I understand your skepticism. Believe me, I do. The reason that I believe that there's validity to this is based off of Sergey Brin's own quotes. Post 2016, Sergey Brin said, "Let's face it, most people here are pretty upset and pretty sad because of this election. I know that I was. I find this election deeply offensive, and I'm sure that many of you do as well. There are a lot of fear here in Google, and I've gotten a lot of emails, and there are people here who are pretty afraid. I grew up in India, and there are many things that are wrong, but with this Democratic Party, we've gone through many, many, many hairy moments like this." Blah, blah, blah. All that to say is that there's reason to believe that there's some validity to the scientific experiments that Dr. Robert Epstein.
For the sake of argument, since I can't research it right now, because that would be really boring for the audience if you and I were just sitting on screen researching data, I would be willing to say that sure, there are companies that try and media companies that try and tilt the information to get certain results, and Google may or may not be one. But for the sake of argument, I'll say, okay, that makes sense. But that too happens on both sides with different tools. I mean, we can talk about the whole Russian influence that took place in 2016. Now, whether Donald Trump,
I've heard the allegations, and I know that the Steele dossier and the background of all of that. So that,
okay,
I mean, that's
let me finish for us to get into. Yeah, let me finish this. And there was by 17 defense-related agencies in Donald Trump's own administration said that yes, there was influence by Russians and by other, shall we say, bad players to try and influence the American vote. It's happening to this day. We can't deny that. Now, whether it made the difference, I don't know. I tend to believe that part of the reason that, since you mentioned beliefs earlier, that the reason one of the major reasons Donald Trump was elected was because of that. Was because of the influence, because of the fake ads that were being put on Facebook, because of the way that the Russian bots or whoever they are, and I'm not an expert in this field, was able to split the Democratic Party and put people who were in support of Bernie Sanders against people who were in support of Hillary Clinton. So you could kind of like fraction it out a little bit. So we were not a united people. I think that's happening right now too on the Democratic Party. Gaza being one example of that. But so the biases are out there.
Where does somebody go to find out more about supporting evidence to this? Because all I know is the Steele dossier. All I know is about the Steele dossier, and I know that Hillary Clinton herself used $10 million of campaign finances to hire Fusion GPS to fabricate that whole story. And I know that
I think we're starting to go down Congress. I think we're starting to go down a path that we don't intend to go to, but that, from what I've heard, has been disputed. And I'd like to get to our main point, but to the answer of your question about where you could find it, you could put down, I'm sure you could search, whether you do it in Google or elsewhere, you could search Russian influence 2016 election defense industry reports or something like that, and I'm sure it'll bring it up. And that's Donald Trump's own government. The people he put in office saying that, yes, there was an influence. One can discuss how much the influence is, but it was there. And we have to accept some facts, again, that are true from both sides. But to the bigger point, at least as I see it, is you and I are illustrating right now, we're seeing different silos of information. And as long as there are different silos of information, we can't... It's hard to rely on what we would call facts, because you said earlier that you'll post something and then somebody will say, well, you're just, whatever they said, a right-wing wacko or something like that. I'll post on my page, and I've had some people who I have stopped following or who have blocked because they just started insulting me with almost the exact same words. They don't call me a right-wing wacko. You're a communist. You've got your head in the clouds. You don't know what you're talking about. So I think the bigger issue is, how do we start to bridge that? Because I think we both admit that it's there. There's a fact that we both share. It's there.
I think it's irrefutable at this point,
right,
that there is manipulation in regard to the media. And I mean, to me, that's my biggest driving goal, is to try to help convince people to seek sources outside of their normal silos. I follow organizations and listen to like Redacted, Gray Zone, Trigonometry, Russell Brand, Jimmy Dore. These are organizations that I believe don't have a personal bias or benefit and try their very best to give accurate information the best that they can. So I understand, I trust them about 90%, and I don't know where they're getting 100% of their information. So I acknowledge that there's always room for error there. But when it comes to mainstream, whether it's Fox, MSN, CNN, or Facebook, YouTube, or Google, I don't listen to or buy into any of it. I don't think that, I truly believe that it's their goal, their objective, to keep us separate, to keep us dissenting amongst ourselves. I feel like there's absolute intent and malice why somebody like you gets a completely different search result, whether you're on YouTube or Google, than somebody like me or somebody on the conservative side. And for the longest time, we used to believe that, it was just them trying to give us what they thought we wanted. It was just them trying to offer their clients and their customers the value. And ultimately, we see the division that's being created. And I think we both agree that it's probably exacerbated and getting worse perpetually. And the question I have to ask is why? Like,
it's for money.
they have the ability to fix it. They have the ability to change and bring us together and help bridge the gap politically, socially, culturally, racially, they have the opportunity and the ability to. So why aren't they?
Because, I mean, at the risk of being the cynic here, it's money, it's clicks, it's engagement. People do not, I mean, there are networks out there like the Good News Network. The minister at our Center for Spiritual Living, she follows that a lot, and I check it out periodically. I know on NBC News, on Saturday night NBC News, I forget his name, Jose, he's a Hispanic news commentator. He ends his...
Is he a local guy to you?
No. He's national. He's on the national. But on the Saturday night NBC News, the last segment is always in Good News Tonight, and he'll find stories that you just sit there and I'm one of these new age. Oh God, that's so nice! Crying my eyes out because I'm so happy. But that doesn't get the majority of interest from most people. What gets the majority of interest for people is getting them up in arms and getting them agitated, because it's like, now I have this righteous anger about, so I'm going to go back and get it reinforced and reinforced and reinforced. And the longer they can keep us, I wish I had the name of this. There was a great quasi-documentary. I'd call it a documentary, but it was presented in a semi-comical story about social media about 3 or 4 years ago. And they showed how it was a series of social media experts, but then there were these little video clips all the way through it about how they just drag you in, and all the tools and techniques to get you to get on their platform more and more. So it generates a lot more views to say, what a stupid idiot, and you're arguing back and forth, than it does to say, I agree with you. That's a good point. I think.
Yeah, I mean, I even did it a little bit in my description for this conversation. I said it might be a train wreck, and we might have fireworks. So I tried to plug a little bit of that drama just to get some extra eyeballs and viewers. Hey, we got these two polar opposites having a political discussion. Maybe we want to see what's happening here, like a NASCAR race,
right? Or a train wreck.
What might happen,
But I think because part of what we intended when we got together was to come up with some sort of solutions. At least I used the analogy when I spoke to you, that if you throw a pebble, and since people who are listening haven't heard the analogy, if you throw a pebble into the ocean, it has to increase the level of the ocean. It just has to. The volume of that pebble.
Called displacement.
Yeah, displacement, exactly. Now, we can't see that level of displacement. It's too minor for us to see it, but it indeed happened. And when I look at what we're trying to do here, and there were several people on my Facebook page, a couple of them at least, who are trying, it turns out, to do similar things to bridge people together. What we are doing is, if we can have a discussion with knowing that we vehemently disagree on almost everything, and we could both go and do our research and cite sources about what, and we can demonstrate that people can talk about this. That's the first step in changing it. That's the pebble in this ocean of disagreement, or agreement, maybe. And I think what we need to do is figure out, we have to both admit that there's the problem, and we both seem to be doing that. And I think you use the example of people are either ignorant, stupid, or evil. If you don't...
No, I said that if we assume that we're right,
and
that our information is accurate and unbiased, then it's a natural assumption to draw the conclusion that the other person must be ignorant, stupid, or evil.
And what I was meaning to say is, if you don't, not you personally, if one does not accept that there are different news sources and there are forces trying to divide us, then those people who don't accept that are indeed either ignorant, stupid, or evil, because they're just, it's apparent, it's everywhere. We see it, we know it, it's there. So knowing that's out there, how do we start to create that bridge? And what you and I are doing, and I imagine, and I hope millions of other people want to do this and are trying to, is let's just talk and see. For example, you asked me a question about what is my biggest concern, or something similar to it at the beginning. What is it? Let's turn this around, if I might. I know you're the host, but if you could change anything to make our country better, if you could only pick one thing to make our country better, what would what would you choose? Because I know what I think I would know what I choose. And then if we can find that bridge about, okay, we both want to have this, we might see different roads to get there, but we both want to have this. Now, how can we start to work together to create that? So what would you like?
Is that rhetorical, or would you like me to answer?
Yeah, if you've got an answer, sure, please. If you could change anything, one small thing? My speaking was always pick one thing, make it small. Let's focus on today. If you could change one small thing about the way our country is right now, what would you change to make it better?
Well, I never think small. So in alignment with what we've been discussing for the last 36 minutes, I would like to get rid of mainstream media. I believe with all of my heart that they are intentionally sowing division in this country. So that would be my one big thing. Like, there has to be a system of checks and balances when these organizations knowingly lie.
Okay.
It could be I don't know what the solution to that might look like, Scott. I don't know what system of penalties or what. I don't have any clue how that might even work. I haven't spent time conceptualizing, but there has to be a way, some form of retribution or penalization when these organizations knowingly sow misinformation. I remember not that long ago, in Forbes magazine, they posted an article denying climate change, saying that the polar ice caps were bigger than they were in 1970. Meanwhile, you can go on NASA and look at satellite imagery and watch the ice caps shrinking. Now, I'm not personally, I haven't made up my mind on our personal human impact on how that's playing out. I don't have enough information, honestly, and I'm not a scientist to know, but I know that you can go on fucking NASA and compare 2024 polar ice caps to 1973 polar ice caps, and they're not fucking bigger. So when organizations tell lies, and these are the companies that you and I rely on to get our information, there should be some sort of retribution. There should be a 3-strike policy or multi-million-dollar fines or penalties or something along those lines, because these organizations cause us to not only divide as a culture, as a society, they cause us to mistrust each other. The first time, I mean, you and I are a great illustration of this. Whenever we have a differing opinion anywhere, the person says, cite your sources. Cite your sources, man. Tell me where you're getting your information. And if they don't like the source that the person provides, they immediately dismiss and deride. So it's you automatically view person as from a place of skepticism and a place of opposition. Like, I don't trust you. I don't believe that you have my best interest at heart. And I don't believe the information that you have or where you're getting it. And it's all because that we can't trust our information. We cannot trust our media organizations. And one example that the easiest example that I can use to express how this has to be true right now is like, do you believe, whether in society or in Congress, that there is political dissent around the issue on the border, immigration?
Yeah.
Do you believe that there's political dissent on how to solve the issue at the border?
Absolutely.
Are you familiar with Section 212F?
No, I'm not. And again, that's going to take us down a path where
it's a short path. Section 212F gives executive authority to the president and the commander in chief to control all aspects of the border. On day one, Biden signed 94 executive orders overturning things that Trump had done. Right now, today, at any moment, by the powers invested in the commander in chief per Section 212F, they can do whatever they need to do to fix whatever needs to be done at the border. Like, we can disagree on what that might look like, the policies, and whether it's 1,000 people a day or what. The fact of the matter is, you don't need a bill in Congress. It's not the Republicans preventing this. The the president and only the president has the authority in this moment to fix the issue, but the media isn't reporting it. You have never even heard of Section 212F. And all we've heard about is, well, we presented this bill and in Congress, and it's the Republicans and it's Trump that vetoed it and didn't let this happen. That's the media propagating a lie.
See, but I could respond
not only in Congress, but it sows division amongst you and I.
If we wanted to again go down a particular issue, I could again respond with James Langford, one of the most conservative senators in all of Congress, a man who I don't agree with virtually at all, was the one who proposed the law that had bipartisan support in the Senate and the House. And then when Donald Trump said, do not pass this bill, it got killed. And Langford wasn't in favor of it. But again, that's going back to the particular issues. Your comment about the media, I can see where you would like to get the mainstream media removed. And being an actor, we have, like when you do improvisation, you do a yes and. So my inclination was to do yes but, was to go, yeah, but I'm going to do a yes and. So I'm going to read into that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. What you're really saying is you would like to have truth and honesty in the news that is presented to us. We can go, either we can penalize those who are not truthful and not dishonest, or we need to re-educate so that when journalists, in whatever classification they are, whether it's a small-time podcaster or ABC News or Google, that they go with the moral background, with the ethics of, I will present truth, as opposed to trying to bias in one direction or another. That would also solve that problem. If we all trusted that the newscasters, the people who are providing us that information, were telling us accurate information, we'd probably agree a lot more.
Definitely, 100%.
Yeah. So for me,
I don't know if I buy into the altruistic vision that the media organization and that machine conglomerate is going to just radically change.
No, it won't.
And get back to the euphoric, altruistic version of, I'm just going to.
I'm not naive. But I was responding to when you had said that would be for you the big thing. It's like, okay, I can see where that would be a problem. For me, I think what we need to have is less, you used the term yesterday when we were having our conversation, and I've used it repeatedly, less othering.
Yeah.
To say that you and I can disagree, but you're entitled to, what's the old adage about your right to swing your fist ends when it hits my nose?
Right.
You're entitled to your opinions. I'm entitled to mine. So let's talk about them and see, like we all want, I would believe, we all want to feel safe and unpersecuted. We all want to be able to, well, the Declaration of Independence is what we're all looking for. We all want to pursue health, happiness, and a way of
liberty and the pursuit of happiness.
Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And if we can find a way to help other people, if I could find a way to reach out to somebody who disagrees with me vehemently and say, how can I help you be healthier or happier or have more liberty? And you do the same for me. And I know you talked yesterday about Pollyanna. I know it's Pollyanna-ish. I know it's naive, but it's going to start by reaching across and saying, not go away, but come closer.
It's not naive. It's optimistic.
It is.
I think it would.
It is. What's the alternative?
Was it Nietzsche that said, treat a man as he appears to be and he only becomes worse, but treat him as if he already were what he potentially could be, then he becomes what he should be? It's not Pollyanna, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's the ultimate optimistic vision of what we can be as a society. But first, I believe that we have to recognize what is actually happening. And that begins with acknowledging that, there is a plethora of lies and dissent, specifically in the media, and we have to address that. We have to question, especially when it comes to the mainstream media, everything that we try to consume. You mentioned in respect to the border issue, what was it, Jacobs?
Langford from
Langford.
Oklahoma.
Yeah. My point is that it didn't even need to go there. There didn't need to be a bill in Congress. If there was an issue that the government wanted to solve, that
And
it could
again,
immediately be fixed.
with the exception of the SCOTUS ruling yesterday, the president is not a king, and
And it still
and
isn't.
and Biden is, if we wanted to go down that road, Biden tried to put an executive order in place, and there are forces, there are lawsuits, there are other entities. I don't know if he has the power that you're saying he does. I will, again, for the sake of argument, accept that. I haven't researched it well enough. I understand immigration is a problem. It is not my top of the list. So I don't follow that as closely. But Biden was just a couple of weeks ago wanted to put an executive order in place, and it got blocked by lawsuits. Now, I'm not even saying they're Republican lawsuits. They can be on the left because we are all sorts of different people. Suspend the entry. Oh, okay. Again, I can look that up later. I don't know if we want to be doing research on that right now.
No, I'm not. I'm sharing it for the sake of our viewers.
Oh, okay. But it boils down to me. I'm pretty adamant about this, as optimistic or Pollyanna-ish as it is, about how can we turn the conversation from what you're taking from me, because that's what's triggering a lot of this. I'm feeling, as I'm sure you are, we talked yesterday, I'm feeling my rights are under major assault, and I'm a white guy, a white older guy. I mean, I'm not wealthy, but I'm about as privileged as they get. But I feel rights are being taken from people. Health is being taken from people. The way this country works is being dissolved. And I would imagine, in light of our conversation yesterday, you could probably say the exact same thing.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, that's I think a great unifying understanding that could really bridge a lot of gaps for people. I know all of the people in my circle on the right side of the aisle feel the exact same way, that their rights are being stripped from them daily, that they're being persecuted and prosecuted daily, and having these conversations about why we feel that way and what we can actually do about that would actually be very beneficial in bridging gaps and avoiding the tribalism and the othering and vilifying that tends to happen when we meet somebody of a political opposition or political opinion that differs from ours.
Yeah, and to realize that there's a talk show host who I like a lot, and somebody you would probably dislike a lot. Her name is Stephanie Miller, and she's a liberal, very liberal. And she's got a line: "If you agree with me 100% of the time, you're an idiot."
I think that's an old Eisenhower quote.
Okay, maybe
Eisenhower
it was.
Once said, "If two men constantly agree, you can be certain only one of them is doing the thinking."
Okay, and so to realize there is no way that we're going to agree on everything, but we can find a way to agree on something, and we use that as the island in the middle of this ocean, where we say, okay, well, all this we don't agree with, but we'll get to that later. The problem is so large that we got plenty of time to work on. I mean, we're not going to get it solved quickly. It's going to take time. So let's start with this thing. Let's start with finding a way. How do we help each other feel empowered and feel that their rights are being preserved, if that's the issue, without taking away from a lot of other people at the same time? And that involves bringing more people, more people, old age, that involves bringing more people into the conversation rather than excluding people. And that's, back to your point, what the media is doing.
And one of the things that I said in our Zoom conversation yesterday is that when it comes to politics and government, the Democrats and the Republicans are in a power game of tug of war in which you and I in society is the rope.
Yeah, I love that.
They want to remain in control. They want to remain in power. They want their ideas, their ideals, their objectives, their rules, their decisions, and they want to stay where they are at the top of the food chain, at the hierarchy of society. And you and I, are the rope in the middle, being torn and twisted and thrown in the mud and stretched thin. And we are the victims of the little game that they're playing. And the more conversations that we can have today, like you and I are having, the more productive that society as a whole can be. To understand, first and foremost, that you asked what is one small thing that I would like to see change. Mm-hmm. Remember that there's a fucking human on the other side of that keyboard. Remember, when you're talking politics, when you're talking ideals, when you're talking about things that you need to change or things that you would like to see or who you want to vote for, remember that there's still a fucking human over there. Somebody that has a family or hopes or aspirations, somebody that has a heart and a conscience and a soul. There's still a human being over there that, like you said, wants love, peace, compassion, joy. They want to know that they can raise a family, that they can contribute to society. Remember, the next time you're typing your little rant and you're about to other or vilify or make the other person feel or look stupid, that's still a human over there.
Mm-hmm. And I think the internet, to a large extent, has allowed the anonymity that we have to, I mean, people say now on the internet, they say horrible things. If you walked up to somebody in the street and said that, you get punched. And they say these horrible, terrible things. And in your and my discussion, which put us together, it was an issue of, even though there was the disagreement, there was no name calling. There was somebody else who got into it, who was doing the name calling. But I
had some names called at me, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I have too. But between you and I, and between what I like to do and what it seems like you like to do in following your feed, is it's not an issue. It's let's stay away from the name calling and try and be respectful. I disagree. Here's why. And here's what I think needs to be done. And then at some point, it just might be, okay, we will agree to disagree agreeably, and say, okay, we have our separate, neither of us is evil, neither the left nor the right, and this is going to come out as controversial among some of my friends, but neither the left nor the right is out to destroy this country or the planet. That's not the intention. That is the byproduct of the way people are treating each other, and the information that we are getting. And if we can, I forget the singer and I can't even remember the lines. So this is really a poor example to bring up, but it's hard to remember. Oh, it's a Harry Chapin song, but it's hard to hate when you're that close with somebody. Mm-hmm. When you're not anonymous, I mean, no matter where we go after this, I can't imagine you and I ever calling each other names. Of course, we didn't start out that way either.
No, and we set a clear intention that this was supposed to be about compassion and understanding and having a productive conversation, and not about winning points or making the other person look bad or trying to get our point or changing anybody's mind. I think we started with the right intention, and that made all of the difference.
Because I think a lot of it, when it's getting points, is then you can turn to your friends of like mind, go, I got him. Yeah, so what? You did. Big deal. In your eyes, you got him, but what change did it make? You got some bonus points on some scoreboard that doesn't exist? I mean, come on. Let's find a way to talk.
Well, there's a whole lot of othering. There's a whole lot of vilifying. Mm-hmm. Both people on both ends of the spectrum feel like they're victims, like their rights are being taken away from them, and that they're very, very, very much at risk. We are, as a society, as a whole, in our sympathetic nervous system in fight or flight almost all of the time.
Yeah.
Again, I go back to the media. Why is that? I mean, when you and I were kids, the news was on at 6 o'clock in the morning. At noon, here's some shit that happened since 6 a.m. At 5 o'clock, well, here's some more shit that happened since noon. And then again at 10 o'clock, well, here's a little bit more that happened since 5. Now,
or on the West Coast, it would be 11 o'clock.
All doom and gloom. And we're stuck in our sympathetic nervous system in this fight or flight. And we feel like somebody else is the cause of our suffering and our fear. And again, I go back to this. I don't think that it's simply amounts to money. I don't think that it simply can be ascribed solely to monetary gain by these organizations.
I can modify my opinion about that. One of my beliefs, and I talk about this a lot at the Center for Spiritual Living when I do a talk there, is I think everything boils down to a contest within a.
Oh no, you cut out. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
You're glitchy.
I hear you clearly.
You froze up on me for a second. Okay. You're back now.
Okay. So what I was saying is I think everything boils down to an issue of fear or faith. and I don't mean by faith, I don't mean religion. I don't mean like, being a
Sure.
Christian or Buddhist or an atheist or anything. I just mean faith is a belief that you have some control, or that there is some entity that you can reach out to that will help guide you in a way. Faith is supposed to support, to help, to guide, not to hurt, to shame, or to blame. Um, and when we move forward, when we are affirmative, we are working in faith. Your whole function of what you do for your career that you described at the beginning is faith. It's
Sure.
by doing these small things, I believe I'm making the world a little better. You could have looked at those exact same situations and say, the world is totally fucked up. I can't do anything about it. That's fear. But you operated in faith and you have made changes. And I have to believe, and it's hard for me right now, and I imagine for you, to keep that faith that things
Well,
are
when
going.
when I look at Biden being reelected, I jump into that fear. And when you think of Trump being reelected, you jump into that fear
Mhm.
that I don't have any control and the world is imploding. It's imminent or incipient, that our destruction is right around the corner. I think one of the good things, it would, I think, be a good conversation to have around your fear on the SCOTUS decision. Like, what is your biggest fear around that? What is it that about that Supreme Court ruling that causes you such angst and anxiety at the moment?
So how, when we talked yesterday, you said we had about an hour, and we're coming up on an hour. So I'm
Yeah,
that time.
I have a hard out at 3:15 my time, 2:15 your time.
Okay.
So
I have a core belief that the president has to function, with some exceptions, under the same rules and laws that we all must function. And for the Supreme Court, which I used to greatly admire and believe was the arbitrator of fairness, to say that the president, a president, not any president. I mean, Biden could start today if he wanted. That any president not only does not have to justify what he does, his motive cannot even be, his or her motive cannot even be questioned as part of an investigation to determine if there was a wrong. That terrifies me, because the wrong person in power, and we have differing views of who that wrong person is, but the wrong person in power can then say, the example that was used in the trial, or the Supreme Court hearings back whenever they were in April, I think, is, could the president order SEAL Team 6 to go out and shoot somebody? And the answer is now yes. That's terrifying.
So that's Sotomayor, right?
No, that was just in the April questioning, when whichever justice asked Trump's attorney, whose name I don't remember. So are you saying that if the president ordered SEAL Team 6 as an official function, or for that matter, anybody, they just keep using SEAL Team 6, I don't even know who that is, but if they ordered SEAL Team 6 to go out and shoot a political opponent, that is an official act and that is protected? And the lawyer, and you could hear the recording of it because we can't watch it on the Supreme Court, the lawyer hemmed and hawed a little bit to get around it, but the bottom line was yes. Richard Nixon said, if the president does it, it's legal. That's not right. The president is not the king. The president has
the Supreme Court was very clear in their ruling in that it only applies to orders in alignment with their natural duties in that role.
There was
assassinating a political opponent isn't congruent with that.
But
and hold on.
Sorry. Go ahead.
The system of checks and balances still exists in that the president can still be impeached and then federally prosecuted. That's still the normal process, even given the Supreme Court ruling. And here's the thing. Do you feel that it would be appropriate for Biden to face negligent homicide charges based on the 13 soldiers that died in Afghanistan?
No, because that's an official act. It's a fucked up act.
Do you feel that Obama should face murder charges for the drone strike on Abdulrahman Alamaki, or the 16-year-old American citizen that was killed without hearing or trial?
Was this in the Middle East?
Yeah. Yemen, I think.
As tragic and as against that as I am, no, I don't think he was. I don't think he's liable, because that's an official act. We can argue about whether it should have been done that way, but that was an official act in supposedly and with intention of protecting the country.
My point is that presidents have always had this particular immunity, and the ruling doesn't overturn the official act part of the president's capacity. This whole SEAL Team 6 thing is a farce. That is something that the media is propagating, and whichever justice that espoused that in their debriefing is not accurate. I've listened to multiple legal and attorney scholars talk about this specific issue. It's still specifically
so here's the story.
Very specific about the official act part. It doesn't overturn or change the narrative or what the qualifications of the act is.
Okay, so I'm not a lawyer, and I'm learning to interpret this just as we all are.
And I'm just trying to regurgitate some of the shit that I've heard in the last 48 hours.
So here's the deal. There was, as I've understood this, there is the legal section, which we're talking about, the drone attacks or whatnot. That is totally 100%, whether tragic or not, within the confines of what the president can do, and is immune from prosecution. I agree with that. I don't like it necessarily what happens, but I got to accept that. There is the stuff that is completely private, which is allowed to be prosecuted, investigated, etc. The problem is this middle section that was put into place, which is if the intention was within the acts of the president, then we can't even question the motive. And John Roberts said that the motive is out of bounds. He didn't use those words. So if a president said, I am concerned about the welfare of our country, I am afraid our country is under attack, and that this entity is doing it, and ordered the Defense Department or somebody within the proverbial SEAL Team 6 to go out and assassinate that person because I'm trying to protect the country, that's a big gray area now. And we are not allowed, according to John Roberts' interpretation, to say what was the motive there. So that removes, it makes it harder. Yeah, I see your hand. It makes it harder to try it. That's where the fear is, not the official or the unofficial. It's that great big giant section in the middle.
Well, I mean, that's an underlying or undercurrent of some of the challenges that we faced in a lot of these indictments, is trying to ascribe motive.
We aren't allowed to ask anymore.
How to go into the heart and mind of another person and describe and really dictate motive is a really big challenge. But it would seem to me, from somebody on the opposite side of the aisle from you, that the person who should be most afraid of this ruling isn't you, but it should be Trump.
If Biden chooses to use it.
If what you say is true, and this whole Sotomayor analogy of SEAL Team 6 assassinating political opposition, shouldn't the person that should be most afraid be Trump at the moment?
You know, I mean, if Biden was that kind of person, yes, I would argue that. But that's the issue, is we have to have faith that back to the faith again, we have to have faith that the people that are getting into office are people who would not do that, because they have so much power at their control. There has to be some sense of moral or ethical bounds that we do not cross as a society or as a person. You just don't cross that. And it wasn't, you keep referencing Sotomayor. She mentioned in her dissent about that, but this was part of the April hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was front and foremost in the last 24 hours.
Yeah, because it's the scary, it's the scary example. But, that's the thing that scares me, is that the powers of the presidency have been greatly expanded. Now, would I like it if Biden said, well, okay, I'm going to use those powers and I'm going to go ahead and appoint 5 more justices to the Supreme Court, and what you're going to do about it? Screw it. Yeah, go for it, Biden. I'd like to hear that. Would I like to have Biden say, I'm going to go ahead and kick out every member of Congress who was a proven insurrectionist? Yeah, go for it. But it's not going to happen. But the fact that
it's amazing to me that so many people on your side seem completely willing to change the rules to get what they want.
Okay, now that was kind of painting with a broad brush. You want to say that again?
Okay, let me try to rephrase.
Okay.
That sounded like, in order to achieve the means and ends that you think would be best, that rules should be or ought to be changed or amended. Like, let's add 5 more Supreme Court justices so that I get what I want and things are balanced in my favor. Or
that's the danger of this. That's the danger of this ruling. I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Well,
that's the danger of the ruling. That's what I'm saying.
I'm only pointing out that I hear that a lot. And I think that's a big part of the reason why people on the other side of the aisle are concerned and fear what's going on.
To go with the other side, Donald Trump has very clearly said, and we're running out of time, so there's no way we're going to get through Donald Trump, but Donald Trump has very clearly said he will, not his exact words, but very damn close, he will wreak vengeance on the people who have been against him. So you put somebody who has clearly said, I will avenge the people who have harmed us, me, them, whatever, once I'm back in office, and now there's these powers. Scary. Again, the same fear that you have about what Biden might do. That's why that power is so frightening, because whoever gets in, you could have some maniacal, I mean, again, because of my political bias, you could have some maniacal left-wing Democrat, progressive, Green Party, whatever you want to call them, get into the presidency and say, okay, cool, let's do this. That would be a bad thing too. I would not be in favor of that. In the same way, you don't want somebody from the far right doing that. That's why that ruling is so scary, because it's opened that up. And now we have to trust in the norms and the values, and yes, to a point, with the checks and balances, but they've been weakened, of the people who we elect for president, which goes back to, because it's 2:10 and I'm trying to honor your time, plus I got to go on too. But
we've got 5 more minutes. We're still good.
To the point of finding a way to have these discussions and to pick one small item, because we can't, it's too big. It's just too big. We've got to pick something small where we can agree. The Middle East situation, even before the whole Gaza, Hamas, Israel disaster, the war crimes that are being committed, even before all of that, there was a Gordian knot. You can't unravel it. You have to find the small. When I spoke to a large extent many times on conflict management, and it's not, we're never going to find consensus, at least not for a long time, but we can find compromise, and we can say, okay, I will do this for you and you will do this for me, and that's the start, and that's what we've got to get to. So
I would like that. I hope so.
I think we all would.
I think, going back to your previous comment about I will seek vengeance, I think before we ascribe intent, it would be good to ask for clarification. So what exactly does that mean, and for whom are you referring? I understand your point. I get it. He's bombastic, and in my opinion, has a great deal to be quite upset about. If he's referring specifically to the 54 intelligence officers that said the laptop was Russian disinformation, or the CIA and FBI people that were going directly to Facebook and Twitter and saying, you need to suppress these stories and you need to get rid of these people and you need to kick these people off your platforms and getting them removed from government, then I think that's completely acceptable. If it's talking about the 5-star generals that lied to him about Syria when he was trying to get our troops out and getting rid of them, then I think that's completely acceptable. If it's talking about throwing Rachel Maddow and everyone from The View into the gulags, then I'm with you. I don't have reason to assume that that's his intent because I'm not on that end of the spectrum. I don't fear Trump in that way. Rachel Maddow and Joy Behar and Whoopi Goldberg and all of those people seem to think that if he gets elected, that they're all going to end up in jail. I think it would be pretty good to have some clarification. What exactly does it look like when you talk about retribution and getting some vengeance on some of these people? Who are you referring to and what does that look like? I really, really appreciate your time and this conversation, Scott. It's been fun. I think it's been productive. I value and appreciate you even more than I did before. I have not lost any. I've only gained. And it means a lot to me that we took the time to do this. I hope that we are an example of what differing opinions politically can look like in a productive conversation. And this could go on for at least another 2 hours, I know. And I wouldn't mind having you on again to actually talk about some more stuff.
I would be open to that, and I appreciate this. And I too feel it's like, okay, there's somebody on there's the term, the other side, where I can reach across, and I'm very grateful for this. Thank you.
I think ultimately a lot of us are. I think most people are very scared, very triggered, very much in their sympathetic nervous system, and we're all reacting out of fight or flight. And it's difficult to think logically and have coherent conversations when we feel at risk. And it doesn't matter what side of the aisle we're on. And just remembering that most people are actually like us.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you, brother. Let's stay in touch. And I look forward to hopefully doing one of these again. Is there anything that you would like to shout out? Any offerings or anything you have coming up, or ways that my audience can reach out and be in touch with you?
I appreciate that. No offerings per se, short of I've got my Facebook group of intentions, affirmations, and manifestations, which I try and keep as a positive group. And I guess just the overall theme of today, just, what is it? Dalai Lama said, my religion is kindness. Before you start calling names at people, just try and, as you said, quoting Brian, there's a fucking human on the other side of that. So let's try and remember that. Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, we are all doing the best that we can with the information that we've got.
You got it.
And ultimately, the fact of the matter is, we're getting different information. It's completely logical that everybody feels the way that they do, given the information and the programming that they've been given. So,
and when this is done and recorded, please do post a link. I'll put it on my Facebook page, and maybe we can get some more people involved in this.
Definitely.
All right.
Appreciate you, brother. Take care, Scott.
Talk to you soon.